Hey everyone, welcome back to the Weekly Awakening Podcast. This is your host, Cosmic Colleen, back with another weekly astrology update. This is episode 272. We are now in the middle of eclipse season. We are now beginning to wane away from the lunar eclipse and towards the new moon solar eclipse. Yay. So the worst of it and the most chaotic energy is this week. I think we can all feel that already. And then when we get to the end of the eclipse season, it's going to feel a little bit less chaotic and a little bit more hopeful, I guess is maybe the right word. These transitions are now playing out, like I said, during this time. These next 2 weeks, we had the lunar eclipse on Sunday, and we're going to be in this energy. It's like a magic mixing bowl for 2 weeks. Again, the eclipses, like I said on last week's episode, they play out over a long period of time, but we're in this like eclipse vortex right now. We're getting just slammed around the fishbowl, you could say. Yesterday on Wednesday the 10th at 3:19 p.m., the sun in Virgo conjunct the south node exactly and opposed the north node in Pisces. On Thursday the 11th, which is today, 9:58 p.m., Mercury will oppose the north node just like the sun did. On Friday the 12th, Mercury in Virgo will sextile Jupiter in Cancer. And on Saturday the 13th at 6:51 a.m., Mercury will conjunct the sun in Virgo. I'm going to talk about these transits this week as we, like I said, we sort of wane away from the lunar eclipse. Then next week, I will talk about what's happening as we process and begin to go towards the solar eclipse in Virgo, which is taking place on Sunday the 21st. Now, I just want to say something and tell you guys, I was in the emergency room this week. I'm totally fine. Everything is fine. No worries at all. But I want to, tie it into astrology and how I use my own birth chart to go to the emergency room and save myself before things got much worse. So on Saturday, I woke up and I had my cuticle was all swollen and it had, everything. I was like, oh, okay, wow, I guess my cuticle is infected around my nail. And I'm a hairstylist. I just ignore it. We just ignore that shit. I put in peroxide, whatever. It's my left hand. I'm not left-handed, so I wasn't even using it. And then the days went on and I would see it. I'm like, it's not getting better. It's not getting better. But again, I don't use my middle finger on my left hand really, so I wasn't really feeling it. And then Tuesday night, I looked at it and it was pussing and I pushed some of it out and it was green. And I said, oh, well, I know enough to know I'm no doctor, but green's not good. And I looked down at my finger and the whole thing is trailed. I have a whole line, a trail that goes from my vein down to my wrist. And I'm like, okay, whoa, that's not good. So at first I thought I was being paranoid because honestly, if you know me, I don't go to the hospital. I don't go to the doctor. I barely take sick days. Most of the time I just let shit work itself out and 9 times out of 10 I'm okay. But I was like, that's not good. I've never seen that. And then I started to think to myself this week, I said, you know what? I need to go get this taken care of immediately. Why? Because we just came off of the lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. As you guys know, I am a Virgo, rising Virgo moon. So this this eclipse was happening with my first house of self and my moon, my body. So, and in a harder way, a harder transit. So I said, all right, this is the alignment for a blood infection, and I'm not playing around. With the and right now, it's conjunct the south node is also I have the nodes in Virgo and Pisces as well, and it's the south node is about to conjunct my south node. So those are things I was not playing around with, and so I went to the hospital. Clearly thinking that they're going to tell me oh, you're being dramatic, whatever. Even when I got there, it was packed. It was a funny group of people that night. And it was packed. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go home. And I said, no, I'm going to stay. And the intake nurse, she looks at it and she said, oh my God. She's like, that doesn't look good. And I was like, you can see it. She's like, yeah, I see all the lines going down right from the infection. And I said, okay. And then the guy came in to take my blood and she said, look at her finger. And he goes, oh my God, that doesn't look good. We got to get her blood work right now. And that freaked me out. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, wait, what? I was expecting you guys to tell me I was being dramatic. And no, so they put an IV pick right in my arm, took my blood, left the IV pick. They're like, it's going to come back in an hour. We'll see from there. We'll probably put you in an IV drip. I was like, what the fuck? So then I'm waiting. Thank God. Thank God it did not. They came back. It didn't come back sepsis. It didn't come back any of that. But it was a bacterial infection or whatever that had gotten in there. And she had said, had I waited, it's hard to say because once it gets in the bloodstream, it moves very fast. Had I waited another, day or three in between there, it probably would have turned into that or sepsis. So that's my scary tale. But also, I use this astrology to look at like what's the more probable, the favorable outcome of this. If it was like, Jupiter in Cancer and it was conjunct that something else, I would be like, okay, I probably would be fine. But when I had seen this, knowing we're in eclipse season, these are negatively, or not negatively, but in a harder way, this eclipse was affecting my Virgo energy and specifically my body. I said, okay, I'm not playing around. Mama is not playing around. Went to the hospital. Again, I'm okay. I'm on antibiotics. Everything is fine. But that's how we can use this astrology. When we look to certain things and we're not sure to make a decision, we can look and say, are the planets on my side? And this time I knew the planets were telling me, get your ass to the hospital because this is going to get worse. And I did, and all is good. So I just wanted to share that. I like to share how it shows up in my life. So, like I said, I'm a Virgo rising, Virgo moon, Gemini Mercury, and Gemini sun. So this eclipse, I am feeling it. I have Mars in Pisces as well. So like I said, I have all these these planets interacting with just specifically, the mutable energy. So it was a weird, I don't know how everyone else felt. Well, I do, the people I've talked to, but I was very moody on Sunday. But by moody, I mean like emotionally reflective. When I felt annoyed, it felt like, it felt bubbly or emotional, but it was just kind of like it was bubbling up in me, I guess I would say. Not like, ooh, bubbly, but emotionally slightly disrupted, I would say, but with a flexible feel. And that's like kind of the takeaway from this energy, especially in Pisces. We were feeling, like I said, emotionally disrupted, emotionally all over the place, but it does feel flexible. It didn't feel like this is forever. It felt like this is the feeling of the moment. So this eclipse energy feels like nothing makes sense anymore. And to get a deeper look into the eclipse energy, I want to talk about the planets Mercury and Jupiter, which are the opposites and the rulers of these eclipses, so that way we can get a deeper feel into this energy. This eclipse series, like I said, it feels very confusing, especially right now where and we have the lunar eclipse in Pisces, a confusing sign. So this eclipse feels confusing, mentally and emotionally all over the place, because it's happening in the Mercury-ruled sign of Virgo and the Jupiter-ruled sign of Pisces. And if you guys don't know this, they are both, when they're in each other's signs, they're in the detriment of one another. And that's where I want to talk about. So again, you get a little deeper idea of this energy. We have Mercury, which is the thinker, the communicator, thrives in living in their minds, always making rational and emotional decisions or making mental sense of their emotions. They process emotions through thinking, through understanding, and sometimes you won't even see their emotions. They're very calculated. Mercury-ruled people, Gemini and Virgo, they're very calculated how they allow others to perceive their emotions, how they give that, because they're constantly in their mind making sense of their emotions, and Mercury's a very fast-moving planet, much faster than Jupiter. So then we have Jupiter, the ruler of Sag and Pisces. It is the planet of deep understanding that comes from that feeling wisdom, that knowledge that is deep into your gut. It is the planet of knowing, of knowledge. It's abundant. It expands everywhere it goes. Jupiter processes things through the gut, not necessarily through the mind. They process things through feeling. They communicate. I mean, how many Sagittariuses do you know that are like, they communicate through sound bowl healing, and they're doing this, and they're playing 10 different instruments, and you can't necessarily sit them down to get a straight conversation, but they'll tell you what they're feeling through the expressions of art, through the expressions of music, and like they're kind of the opposite. They can't necessarily hide their feelings. They speak with their feelings. They just say it, and then afterwards they worry about making rational sense of it. So there right there is the two oppositions between those planets. This eclipse season is rather confusing, like I said, because there's a lot of conflict between the mind and the gut, the knowing and the processing. There are points where your mind is super on point, okay, during this eclipse season, which is going to be the last new moon in Virgo, even though it wasn't eclipse yet, that sort of began this energy, and then the solar eclipse in Virgo on September 21st. So those two are like, that's make mental sense of this. However, right now we're in the energy where your intuition, like I said last weekend, was on point. That awareness, the awareness came to you. There's no longer denial, but the messages may still be a little scrambled. Maybe that awareness, you're not quite sure what way to take it or how to make it. Going between these two planets makes this eclipse, the energy of it, truth versus denial, reaction versus no reaction, understanding versus knowing, thinking versus feeling. So take those things, like I just said, truth versus denial, reaction versus no reaction, understanding versus knowing, thinking versus feeling, and those are going to be where a lot of the themes are around within us and within the people around our life. Let's think about and come up with a goal with this eclipses. Are we going to, which side of the coin do you want to lay on, right? Do you need to have more reactions? Do you need to get more into your emotions? Do you need to open up emotionally? Or do you need to stop having reactions? Do you need to take control of your emotions? Do you need to get it mentally together and stop letting your emotions run the show? Those are going to be which side of the coin do you lay on? And you should have a much better idea after this weekend and going into the week. Where do you need to work, right? Do you need more denial? I don't think anyone needs denial, but maybe once in a while that's pretty good, especially if you're too far into the truth, right? It's about finding the balance in between. You maybe react too much, so you need to work on non-reaction and vice versa. So really focus on that and say, which do I need? Which side of the coin do I fall on? Do you need to make a little more rational sense, like I said, of your emotions, or get your mind back together, or do you need to understand and express your emotions in a different way and to the way that's going to help you free yourself? Maybe, show again, it's going to be, are you showing more of the emotional side or more of the mental side? Now, think about which side you're on. Like I said, over these next 2 weeks, though, after this weekend, you're going to have a little bit of a better idea. Gain the awareness and the insight as it comes daily. Even if you need to put a little pen and paper, a little Post-it note, and write something, a sentence a day, and that is just like a self-awareness sentence a day. It doesn't have to be a whole paragraph, but something simple. And even if, like, for instance, it's the emotions, you can write a little post that said, how can I express my emotions better? There are going to be a lot of twists and turns you didn't see coming, but you will be open to each way it's coming. Mutable placements do well with change better than the rest of the zodiac. They are made for multiple outcomes, being able to adapt in a new way. That's why the mutable placements tend to have trouble staying in one position in one life area, because they're so open to however the life plays out that they kind of naturally will seek some changes. And also, we still have Uranus and Gemini, so that is adding to the flavor of the sudden twists and turns. Any new ways that you happen upon during this time, you will adapt fast. Remember, this is for my Mercury and Jupiter placements, the mutable placements, anything. This might have something, like I said, switches it really quick, but you will adapt to the multiple outcomes fast. I'm sure we could all adapt to multiple incomes, but the outcomes fast, and it comes natural. Whatever shifts happen, it's sometimes, and again, sometimes you guys actually crave it. There's a deeper level inside of you that is actually, and again, this is from my mutable placements, actually subconsciously or consciously crave disruption. And again, I know for myself, and I'm all mutable, I mentally fantasize about changing my life all the time. I don't necessarily do. I've learned how to stay put a little bit more in my adult life. But I am always fantasizing about it and always saying, Colleen, it's okay to be grounded. It's okay to be rooted into something. I have to ask myself often what's happening in my brain. And I'm just like, okay, I need to come back down to life. I need to come back down to reality. I'm someone who doesn't, and I want to know my Mercury people, I think you guys are probably a lot like this. I never think about my past, really. I mean, I'll bring up funny stories and stuff, but I never dwell on my past. And trust me, I did some fucked up shit. I never dwell on it. Whatever. It's already done and happened. But I am a big-time future thinker. That's where I get lost. And not like worries. I get into these fantasies. I get lost into these fantasies in my head. Since I was a kid, I always say that my first drug of choice was fantasy, mental fantasy. So now I want to tie into Saturn. This eclipse season, I talked a little bit about it on last week's episode, brings a battle of the wills and responsibilities. This is a big eclipse energy around boundaries, and with Saturn back in Pisces, you may almost be thrown back into some sort of karmic responsibility. You have to think long and hard about the boundary and see if you're going to go back down the path or stick to this boundary that you have. That is something that is going to play out over this eclipse energy. Nothing makes sense anymore during this eclipse season, and it's going to be about making sense of it between now and into Pisces season in the spring, whenever those eclipse seasons will continue. It's about uncovering what's bubbling up to the surface. That's one of the things that happen. Not only are these little domino effects, but what is bubbling up to the surface. This week, with the Sun and Mercury conjuncting the South Node and opposing the North Node, which is what creates the eclipses, the North Node and the South Node, Pisces and Virgo are again going to be feeling this the most, but same with my other two signs, Gemini and Sagittarius. This longing, there's going to be this longing or soul quest to end something. It's finally coming to a head with the Sun and Virgo conjunction with the South Node. When we think of the South Node, there is spiritual healing. Now, with the South Node in Virgo, the sign of the perfection, right? Virgos are perfectionists or perfecting, especially when it comes to one's own mind or self. There is this knowing that has been in you because, quite frankly, it's a Virgo's quest to perfect oneself with awareness. They often mental clutter and distraction get in the way, mostly overthinking. Now with Pisces energy, there is this distraction of emotional clutter and doing the opposite of perfecting the awareness, but pretending it doesn't exist. So we have one edge of the coin, which is Virgo. There's the opposition, like I want to know, I want to gain awareness, I want to perfect my mind. And then we have the other opposite, Pisces, that's like, I want to pretend like this isn't happening. I just want to live in my emotions or getting lost there. So the spiritual knowledge is coming to the surface, but so is knowing what's best for you. You know what's best for you. There is no more tricking yourself or being fooled by anyone else. This weekend especially, and it's going to play out as the rest of eclipse season, you're going to be feeling that with the Sun and Mercury conjunct in the South Node and then opposing the North. And then opposing the North Node. Acceptance. Oh no, where am I at? Acceptance that feels like closing a chapter of pain or bringing painful circles to forgiveness and healing. This conjunction brings freedom of soul through freeing the mind. This is going to bring creative breakthroughs again this weekend when Mercury and the Sun conjunct again. This is going to bring creative breakthroughs in the mind. You maybe weren't sure what words to use or how to mentally take your ideas or your mind and place them into the real world in front of you. That pause was for rest. We are in a state of constant creation right now, and I'm not talking about the fun kind that is missing right now, but living in a world where we are constantly stimulated and on the mental go. That means that sometimes in order to create, we got to be forced to not create. So that's why there's been this lull. I feel like since Mercury and the Sun, they were conjunct the weekend, what was it? Thursday, July 31st. Mercury retrograde was conjunct the sign of Leo, and in the sign of Leo, they were conjunct then. And I feel like at first that shut down our creative energy a little bit. And again, we're always on the go. We're always mentally on the go. And sometimes we have to be forced to shut down. We have to be forced to stop creating. Even in this world, right? If anyone has content or anyone has anything, it's a constant cycle of creating. It's like, okay, put more out, pour more out. But that mentally drains us and actually takes away the creativity. So we have to be forced to just stop, to not want to do it in order to get the steamboat going again and in the way you want it to go. So again, we should be feeling more creative breakthroughs after this weekend and then really harness those when we get to the solar eclipse in Virgo. This is about treating your mental burnout so you have more time and more fun with your creations. This is a time to get yourself back to being goal-oriented because we've all been, I think, mishmash of all over the place since we had that conjunction on the 31st. And now we're having Mercury direct in its home domicile where it's exalted with the sign of Virgo. So again, it's like coming back full circle. Even my Leo placements, any answers or any disruptions that happen on the 31st, you should be finally feeling past those disruptions, past those blocks, and you should be heard. You should be feeling heard. So it feels like to me the plan was launched, especially even in the summertime. This is again tying back to the Mercury and the Sun conjunct. It feels to me that the plan was launched, or an idea was launched, or maybe had a revision, which Mercury was retrograde. Now, with this conjunction, you're coming up with a plan. You're exalting. You are executing the tiny movements you need to accomplish or make a big turn with those ideas and turn them into something out. The thing with Virgo energy and Mercurial is it's tiny steps. It's tiny movements that fill out through the whole day. So a lot of times that's why they are good at coming up with the base plan. They're good at doing the multiple things a day. They're good at getting going. So like I said, now you're laying the foundation. Now you're coming up with the PowerPoint. You're coming up with the list. You're coming up with the ways that you need this plan to work out. So, like I said, this week has still been a little confusing, a little wonky. There's been a lot of energy all over the place, especially for my mutable placements. However, this weekend, I feel as once we hit Sunday, Monday, things, like I said, are going to be feeling clearer, more clarity, a deeper understanding. All next week is going to be much clearer than this week is. So I will be back next week. We'll talk about then headed towards the solar eclipse in Virgo that we have next Sunday, the 21st. So I will be back. I hope everyone enjoys their week. Try to get out there and spread love. Say hello. That's my son Abram saying hello himself, trying to make himself funny on my podcast, but not appropriate, Abram. Everyone, on that note, I'm going to end it. I love you all. Have a great day. Goodbye.